You ever had a neighbor so obsessed with control, they'd rather destroy your property than admit they're wrong? Well, I have. Her name is Karen, and this is the story of how my 12-foot inflatable Santa turned her life upside down. It started with a knife. Not a metaphorical one, a real, serrated kitchen knife, plunged straight through the vinyl belly of my brand new Christmas inflatable. I found it the morning after I set him up, Santa, standing tall in my front yard, waving cheerfully at the neighborhood like the jolly ambassador of holiday cheer. Or at least he was waving, until someone snuck over in the middle of the night and murdered him like a B-list slasher villain. At first, I thought maybe it was teenagers, some late-night prank. But when I checked my doorbell camera, there she was. Karen. Bathrobe, slippers, hair in curlers, and a scowl that could melt ice. She marched across my lawn like she owned the world, yanked the power cord from the outlet, and stabbed poor Santa right in the gut, twice. Then, for good measure, she grabbed a Sharpie and scribbled something across his face. When I zoomed in on the footage, I could barely believe my eyes. It said, "Violation, unsanctioned yard decor. Remove immediately. HOA President." Here's the thing, we don't have an HOA. Never have. Years ago, the neighborhood voted against forming one. But Karen? She's been pretending to run a community board for years. New neighbors fall for it. She prints fake letters, makes up rules, and hands out fines like she's some suburban warlord. Most people just ignore her. I did too, until she attacked my Santa. At first, I was stunned. Then I was angry. You don't just stab a man's inflatable and expect peace. So I fixed it. Patched the hole, scrubbed off the marker, and put Santa right back up. But Karen wasn't done. That night she struck again, this time with garden shears. I woke up to find Santa slumped over, deflated and mangled, with a second note taped to my door. Final warning, fines will be issued. Non-compliance will result in legal action. That's when I knew it wasn't just about decorations. It was about control. Karen needed to feel powerful. She didn't care about Christmas or inflatables or neighborhood aesthetics. She wanted obedience. And I was done playing nice. If Karen wanted a war over lawn decorations, fine. But she had no idea I was about to fight back, with a vengeance. The second attack on Santa wasn't just sabotage, it was a declaration of war. After finding him shredded again, I decided to confront Karen directly. I printed the stills from my security footage, circled her face, and marched 2 streets over to her house. Her yard, of course, looked like a propaganda station. Laminated signs everywhere. Keep lawns uniform. HOA regulations enforced here. And my personal favorite. Silent nights, no blinking lights after 9 p.m. I rang the doorbell. She answered with a smug grin, bathrobe once again in full glory, sipping from a mug that said, "Madam President." "Can I help you?" she asked, like she didn't just commit inflatable homicide 2 nights in a row. I held up the photos. "Explain this." She took one glance, then shrugged. "As acting head of the HOA, I'm empowered to enforce regulations regarding lawn aesthetics. Your inflatable violates our holiday decor guidelines. Excessive height. Garish colors. Inflated after 9 p.m. That's 3 violations." I blinked. "Karen. There is no HOA." She smiled like I was a clueless child. "The Homeowners Advisory Group was reinstated by executive vote." "Executive vote of you?" She sipped her coffee and closed the door in my face. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't confused. She wasn't misinformed. She was delusional and dangerous. I went home, patched up Santa for the second time, and set him up again. This time I staked him deep into the ground, zip-tied the power cord, and pointed 2 floodlights directly at him like he was on display at the Smithsonian. I even added a sign that read, "Santa is protected by federal holiday cheer. Trespassers will be prosecuted." That night I didn't sleep. I waited. At 11:43 p.m., she struck again. This time, she didn't just go after Santa, she came after my yard. She slashed the Christmas lights lining my driveway, ripped up the candy cane stakes, and knocked over a light-up reindeer so violently it snapped in half. And then, just like before, she left a note. Final enforcement action. Property to be reported to HOA Legal Division. I laughed out loud. HOA Legal Division? What even was that? A stack of printer paper in her garage? But it wasn't funny for long, because the next day, things got worse. I started getting emails. Somehow, she dug up my work address and sent a formal-looking community complaint report to my boss's assistant, claiming I was a nuisance homeowner and a danger to local children due to obscene and aggressive lawn displays. It didn't stop there. She mailed violation notices to my mortgage lender. She filed a noise complaint with the city, even though my decorations don't make a sound. She even taped one of her bogus letters to the windshield of my wife's car while it was parked at the grocery store. Karen had officially gone nuclear. What started as petty vandalism had become full-blown harassment. And the worst part? A few new neighbors actually believed her. They hadn't been around when the HOA vote failed years ago. They saw her laminated letters, her phony legalese, and assumed she was legit. I realized something chilling. Karen wasn't trying to win a battle over holiday decorations. She was trying to create an empire, one where she made the rules, and everyone else submitted. But I wasn't going to submit. Not to Karen. Not to a fake HOA. Not to a woman who stabbed Santa Claus in the chest and called it enforcement. No, it was time to hit back, and this time, I wasn't just defending my lawn. I was defending the soul of the neighborhood. If Karen wanted to escalate, then escalate we would. After that third attack, after she targeted my wife's car, my job, my decorations, I realized something important. Karen didn't just want the inflatable gone. She wanted me gone. She wanted control. She wanted the whole neighborhood to see someone stand up to her and fail, so they'd never dare challenge her made-up authority again. Well, she picked the wrong neighbor. That night, I pulled out a notepad, cracked open a beer, and started sketching. Not a drawing, really. More like a blueprint. A blueprint for war. If she wanted Santa off my lawn, then I was going to give her a version of Santa that would haunt her dreams. One that couldn't be stabbed, slashed, deflated, or yanked. If she wanted to bring out the claws, I'd bring the concrete. Step 1. I bought a 55-gallon plastic drum, the kind used to store chemicals or water. I cut the top off and filled it with a mix of gravel, sand, and quickrete. Once it dried, I had a base that weighed over 300 pounds. Step 2. I reinforced the inside of the inflatable. Karen had attacked the vinyl directly, so I added an internal frame of PVC pipes, cross-braced and anchored into the concrete drum at the base. Then I used duct tape and epoxy resin to patch every previous cut she'd made, layering vinyl like armor plating. Step 3. I rigged the power supply into a tamper-proof box, bolted to the ground, with a remote-controlled timer inside the house. No more yanking the plug and running off like a coward. But the real magic, the cherry on top, was what I placed at the very base, inside the concrete, ceramic bricks. Heavy. Dense. Completely invisible to the naked eye, but guaranteed to destroy anything that hit it with force. I worked through the night like a man possessed. The neighborhood was asleep, but I was deep in the lab, surrounded by Santa parts, zip ties, and enough tools to build a small rocket. By sunrise he stood tall again. 12 feet of jolly vengeance. Same Santa face. Same waving hand. Same red suit. But this time he was a tank in a Christmas costume. And to keep things festive, I added a few details just for fun. A motion sensor speaker that shouted, "Ho-ho-no!" if someone got within 5 feet, and blinking lights that spelled, "Merry Christmas, Karen," across his chest. From the street he looked harmless. Cheerful, even. But underneath? A fortress. I didn't have to wait long. That night, right around 11:45 p.m., almost like clockwork, Karen appeared again. This time, she had a leaf blower, a broom, and something that looked suspiciously like a BB gun. She crept across my lawn like a cartoon villain, muttering to herself as she lined up her next attack. The motion sensor caught her. Ho ho no! Santa boomed. She jumped back like she'd been electrocuted, then growled and raised the BB gun. I held my breath behind the curtain. Pup pup pup. Nothing. Vinyl didn't tear. The frame didn't budge. Santa stood tall, mocking her with every blink of his cheerful red lights. She screamed. Loud. Then she stormed back to her driveway and did something I never expected. She got in her car. Oh no! I whispered. I ran to the camera feed just in time to see her angle her SUV toward my front yard, right at Santa. She revved once. Twice. Then floored it. The moment Karen floored it, time seemed to slow. Her SUV lurched forward, tires squealing across the pavement as she tore across the curb and into my yard. I stood frozen behind the curtains, remote in one hand, phone in the other, watching my security feed like it was a live-action movie. Then, impact. It was glorious. Her front bumper hit the base of Santa like a wrecking ball striking a mountain, and lost. The sound was sickening, metal crunching, glass cracking, the unmistakable hiss of a destroyed radiator. Her headlights blinked once, then died. Steam billowed out from under the hood like stage fog at a bad Christmas play. Santa? Still waving. Still smiling. Unmoved. Karen, on the other hand, stumbled out of the driver's seat like a dazed raccoon. Her slippers were half off, her hair wild with static, and her mouth hung open in disbelief as she staggered toward the monument of holiday vengeance she just failed to destroy, for the fourth time. I couldn't resist. I stepped outside, holding my hot chocolate like a trophy. Something wrong, Karen? She whipped around, red-faced and panting. You trapped me! I raised an eyebrow. I built a Santa, Karen. You're the one who decided to play demolition derby. Before she could reply, the sound of sirens pierced the winter air. 2 squad cars rolled up, red and blue lights bouncing off the snow-covered rooftops. My neighbors were already stepping outside, rubbing their eyes, drawn by the chaos. A small crowd began to gather, cameras out, whispering. It was a suburban spectacle. Out of the first car stepped Officer Mitchell, a guy I'd seen around a few times at block events. He took one look at the smoking wreck that used to be Karen's luxury SUV, then at the still-standing inflatable, and muttered, "What the hell?" Karen launched into her performance immediately. "Officer, thank goodness. I've been the victim of a malicious trap. This man, this maniac, put concrete inside that thing." Mitchell blinked. "You drove onto his property, to hit a lawn decoration?" Karen froze. "It was a safety hazard. I was trying to remove it for the good of the neighborhood." The second officer, a younger guy named Daniels, followed the tire tracks with his flashlight. "This hazard is 10 feet off the sidewalk. On private property. She's been harassing me for weeks," I said calmly. "Destroyed my decorations multiple times. Sent fake HOA letters. Tried to contact my employer. And now, apparently, she's committing vehicular assault against holiday inflatables." Mitchell sighed. "Do you have proof of all that?" I smiled and pointed to the blinking red light on the corner of my house. "Every second. Multiple angles. Audio included. Want me to email it?" Karen paled. Daniels stepped closer. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to stay right there while we take statements. You may be facing charges for reckless driving, destruction of property, and trespassing." I was protecting the neighborhood," she shouted, her voice cracking. "From a Santa Claus?" Mitchell deadpanned. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then came the final nail. Susan, my neighbor from 2 houses down, stepped forward holding a phone. "I have copies of the fake fines she's been handing out. I kept them just in case." More neighbors nodded, murmurs spreading. "She told me I owed $150 for Christmas light pollution. She fined my kid for putting up a snowflake flag. She taped a violation notice on my dog." Mitchell and Daniels exchanged a long look. Karen realized she was surrounded. I suggest you call a tow truck, Mitchell said, writing up a citation. And ma'am, if you step on his property again, even to wave at that inflatable, you're getting arrested. Karen snatched the paper from his hand, glaring at me like I'd ruined her life. But I didn't flinch. I just raised my mug in a toast. Merry Christmas, Karen. And with that, the officers walked off. The neighbors began to disperse, whispering, smirking, sharing copies of the incident video. And me? I stood tall beside my unbroken Santa, knowing full well this war wasn't over, but the tide had finally turned. If you think Karen got exactly what she deserved, tap that like button and share this story with someone who loves a good revenge story. I thought the SUV crash would be the end of it. I mean, who rams a 300-pound Santa, gets caught by the cops, and then keeps going like nothing happened? Karen. That's who. Less than 24 hours after the police left, I found a new letter taped to my front door. Red ink header, laminated, with full legal formatting. My stomach twisted even before I read it, but once I did, I had to sit down to keep from laughing. Mandatory community vehicle damage reimbursement fee, $275 per household. Due to a neighborhood safety failure leading to the destruction of the HOA president's personal vehicle, all community members are hereby required to contribute toward emergency repairs. Failure to comply may result in liens or legal action. It even included an envelope, addressed to Karen's house, with a cheerful line at the bottom. Checks payable to HOA Restoration Fund. I took a picture and sent it to my neighbor Mike with a one-word caption. She's lost it. He texted back. Porch meeting. 10 minutes. When I arrived at Mike's house, he was already outside, flanked by Susan and 3 other longtime residents. Everyone was holding a copy of the same ridiculous letter. More neighbors trickled in, waving their own. The vibe? Mutiny. This is it, Susan said. She's officially crossed into Fantasyland. She wants us to pay. One neighbor scoffed. For ramming someone's decoration. Mike nodded grimly. It's time to shut her down for good. Over the next few hours, the neighborhood became a hive of righteous energy. People knocked on doors. Copies of Karen's fake finds were dug out of drawers and email inboxes. Someone created a Google Drive titled Karengate and filled it with PDFs. Someone else made a meme of her SUV crumpled against Santa with the caption, Silent night, violent fight. The final blow came when Susan, legend that she is, called the city clerk's office and asked for confirmation of any registered HOA entities tied to our neighborhood. They emailed back within the hour. No such HOA exists for your district. Any claims to the contrary may constitute fraud. By sunset, we had a plan. Karen had been using intimidation tactics for years, relying on fear and confusion. But now, with the entire neighborhood united, we were going to confront her publicly, with witnesses, proof, and cameras rolling. The next afternoon, 20 residents gathered in front of Karen's house. I stood near the front with Susan and Mike. Karen opened her door wearing a smug expression, arms crossed like she was ready to lecture a kindergarten class. Here to drop off your checks? She asked. Mike stepped forward, waving the letter. Actually, we've got a few questions. Karen's smile froze. Susan stepped up beside him, holding her phone. We spoke with the city. They have no record of any HOA here. Which means, you've been collecting money under false pretenses. Karen blinked. That's ridiculous. I've got your emails. Another neighbor chimed in. I've got printed copies of your fake violation forms. Someone else added. And I've got the security footage of you destroying my wreath display last year, said a retired teacher from the corner lot. Karen's lips tightened. You all think this is funny? Mike's voice rose. This is fraud, Karen. You've been scamming people, new neighbors especially, for years. And now you're asking us to pay for your reckless driving? We're not doing it. Not anymore. Then, one by one, we did the thing that finally broke her. Everyone ripped up the reimbursement letter, dramatically. Dozens of pieces of laminated paper fluttered to the ground like confetti at a celebration. Karen watched in stunned silence, jaw trembling. "You can't do this!" she shrieked. "This is harassment. I'll sue!" Susan smiled sweetly. "With what HOA funds?" That's when Karen truly snapped. "I am the HOA!" she screamed. "No, Karen," I said calmly, stepping forward. "You're a lonely woman with a laminator and too much time on her hands." And with that, Mike handed her one final letter, from the city attorney's office, confirming that a formal investigation had been opened into her financial activities. Karen read it, face draining of color. Then she backed into her house without another word and slammed the door. But it was too late. The community had turned. And the woman who once ruled the block like a petty dictator had just been overthrown, by Santa, a security camera, and a united cul-de-sac. Comment below, what would you have done if your neighbor tried to charge you for crashing their own car? Let us know, we're reading every reply. After that showdown in front of her porch, Karen disappeared. For days, her house sat dark and silent. No foot traffic, no clipboard patrols, no laminated notices fluttering on front doors. It was like the wicked witch of the cul-de-sac had melted into her shag carpet. But the silence wasn't peace, it was the calm before the storm. Because while Karen sulked inside, the city was mobilizing outside. The formal investigation had begun. Within a week, officials from the fraud division and the city attorney's office started contacting residents. They wanted copies of her letters, emails, bank deposit slips, anything showing a money trail. And oh boy, we had receipts. Neighbors sent screenshots, payment records, even photos of handwritten fines she had personally dropped in mailboxes. One woman found an old notebook in her garage labeled HOA dues collected, 2023, with check amounts, dates, and names written in Karen's loopy handwriting. It was game over. And Karen? She had no idea. She still thought she could outbluster everyone. That she could dig in, slap on another fake title, and will the world to obey her imaginary authority. That delusion shattered 2 Mondays later. I was sipping coffee on my porch, Santa still standing strong beside me, by the way, when a small fleet of official vehicles rolled down the street. 3 sedans from the city, a marked police cruiser, and a truck bearing the seal of the county treasurer's office. They stopped in front of Karen's house. I stood up. So did Mike. So did Susan. And then, one by one, the rest of the neighbors appeared, coffee mugs, phones, and lawn chairs in hand. It was like a front-row seat to karmic justice. Karen's door opened a few inches, then slammed shut again when she saw who was outside. Didn't matter. A female investigator stepped forward and knocked sharply, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Simmons," she called, using Karen's real last name for the first time any of us had heard it. "We have a warrant to seize records and issue a formal notice regarding financial misconduct tied to unlicensed community management activity." Translation: they were here to take her down. It took 5 minutes of banging and repeated warnings before Karen finally cracked the door open, her face a pale, shaky mask of disbelief. You can't do this," she croaked. "I'm the HOA president. I have protected this community. You've impersonated a legal entity." The investigator cut in, her voice crisp. "And illegally collected funds for years. That's fraud. Possibly tax evasion. You are under investigation, Ms. Simmons. You are not above the law." Then came the paperwork. One envelope after another. A cease and desist from the city. A lien notification from the county. An audit notice from the IRS. And an official foreclosure document from her bank. Karen swayed like she was going to faint. I can pay it back," she muttered. "I still have records binders. Your assets are frozen," the agent said bluntly. "Any further financial activity may be considered obstruction." Karen went silent. Then she did something no one expected. She screamed. Not words, just a raw, primal screech of rage and helplessness. She slammed the door so hard a shutter fell off the second-floor window. The officials remained unfazed. They went in minutes later with legal authority and began collecting evidence. Laptops, binders, external drives, even a portable laminator. Her reign of fake fines ended where it began, in that overdecorated living room. By mid-afternoon, her front yard looked like a garage sale of shame. Boxes of documents, a stack of HOA infraction signs, and one pitiful cardboard sign scrawled in red sharpie. This isn't fair. Then came the final act. A tow truck arrived to repossess her damaged SUV, still bearing the scars of the Great Santa collision. The driver took one look at the front end, whistled low, and shook his head. Karen didn't come out. She just peeked through the blinds, a ghost in her own house. By sunset, a "For sale, foreclosure auction" sign had been hammered into her lawn. No one clapped. No one cheered. But you could feel the shift in the air. A pressure lifted. A peace restored. And the symbol of that peace? My inflatable Santa, still standing proud, glowing softly in the evening light. Later that night, as neighbors gathered for a quiet celebration, Mike handed me a cold beer and clinked the bottle against mine. "You know," he said, "when you put that thing up, I thought it was tacky." I grinned. "You and Karen both. But now," he raised his drink, "to the Santa that saved the suburbs." We toasted. Karen didn't show her face again. Within a week, moving trucks arrived, this time not with new furniture, but with men hauling out the remnants of a failed fantasy. She was gone by morning. No goodbyes. No letters. No more laminated threats. Just a trail of debt, embarrassment, and unmailed fines. And us? We were free. If you love seeing karma served cold, or in this case, frozen and inflatable, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the next wild revenge tale from the suburbs. That winter, my inflatable Santa stayed up longer than ever. Through wind, snow, and 2 separate blizzards, he stood tall, waving, glowing, unbothered. The same way our neighborhood now stood, calm, united, and finally free from the grip of one woman's delusion. Every time I walked past that 12-foot monument of vinyl and vengeance, I smiled. Not because of the petty victory. Not because Karen's SUV was now scrap metal or her fake HOA dissolved into scandal. No, I smiled because of what Santa had become. He wasn't just a decoration anymore. He was a symbol. A symbol of what happens when good people stand their ground. A symbol of what happens when a community says, "Enough." A reminder that sometimes you don't need to scream or threaten or stoop to someone else's level. You just need to stand tall, plant your feet, and hold the line. Even if the enemy comes at you with scissors, lies, or a luxury SUV. In the weeks that followed, neighbors who had once stayed quiet began decorating again. Lights went up. Lawn ornaments returned. One house even put up a giant inflatable elf with a little sign that read, "Protected by Santa's Union." Karen's house sold quietly at auction. The new owners? Lovely people. The first thing they did? They put up a snow globe in the yard, and asked if it was okay to park their sleigh next to Santa. I told them, absolutely. Because this neighborhood? It finally belonged to the people again. And every December since, I rebuild Santa. Bigger. Brighter. Stronger. Not out of spite, but as a promise. You can knock him down. You can slash, stab, or spin lies. But some things, you just can't deflate. In the heart of this story about one inflatable Santa and a rogue HOA president, lies a powerful message about community, resilience, and the danger of unchecked authority. Sometimes, standing up to toxic behavior doesn't require shouting matches or legal brawls. It requires quiet strength, persistence, and a little creative thinking. Our protagonist didn't fight Karen with the same weapons she used, lies, threats, and intimidation. Instead, he stood firm, stayed calm, and let the truth, and a reinforced Santa, speak for itself. More importantly, this story reminds us that bullies thrive in silence. Karen got away with her fake authority for so long because no one challenged her. But when the community stood together, her illusion of power crumbled instantly. Whether it's in a neighborhood, a workplace, or anywhere else in life, integrity and unity will always outlast fear and control. You don't have to fight every battle with fire, you just have to build something strong enough that no one can knock it over. And sometimes, that something is a 12-foot Santa with concrete shoes.